See our next topic, construct. So what exactly constructor is? A constructor is a special member method, or it is a special method which is called by the JVM, which is called by the JVM. Remember this, a constructor is a special member method which is called by the JVM automatically or implicitly. So we can use implicit, or you can use automatically. Okay, a constructor is the special member method which is automatically called by the JVM for placing the user or programmer defined values. For placing the user or programmer defined values instead of the default values. Instead of default values. Instead of default value. So understood what exactly constructor is? So constructor is a special method which is automatically called by the whom? JVM for placing our own user defined values, our programmer who has given the values. So those values only it will be taking it and it will be performing the operation on that. Okay. So let's see what are the advantages we are getting when we are using the constructor. Advantages. What are the advantages we are getting? The first advantage is constructor eliminates placing the default values. It will eliminates placing the default values. Default values. Eliminate. Eliminates placing the default values. Normally, if you are not giving the values, let's say for example, for employee constructor, we are passing some values, let's say employee ID, and we should pass employee ID and the salary. If you are not passing the employee ID and salary, by default it will be taking, if it is an integer, it will take 0. For salary, it is double, right? It will take 0.00, something like this. If you are not passing our values. So it will eliminate placing the default values. Constructor will do when we are passing some values, right? If we are passing some values, it will eliminate the default values. By default, it will be placing some default values. Okay. Next advantage is constructor eliminates calling the normal method. See, what we have done so far is we have created a class and we have declared some method inside the class, and we are calling the method after creating an object of the class. So here constructor will not do that. Constructor will be called by the JVM. You don't need to make a call with respect to an object name, with respect to a class name, something like that. So constructor will be itself called by the JVM. You don't need to do anything. So that is the second advantage we have. So let's see some of the rules of the constructor. What are the rules we have to follow when we are creating the constructors? You can say, you can consider as rules, you can consider the properties of the constructor, or you can consider the characteristics you have to follow while writing any constructor. The first one is constructor name must be similar to the class name. So what is that? Constructor name must be similar to the class name. This is the first characteristics, or first rule we have. The second rule, constructor should not return any value, even void also. Even void also, it shouldn't be written. What if we do? What if we are returning a value? What if we are returning a value? What if we return value? What if we return a value? If we return a value, constructor will be acting as a normal method. If we return a value, constructor will be acting as a acting as a normal method. Constructor will be acting as a normal method. So you shouldn't be returning any return type. You shouldn't be writing any return type. Okay. So the third rule is constructor should not be static. Why? Because constructor will be called each and every time for creating an object. So if we declare constructor as a static, it will be called only once. Okay, it will be called only once. So constructor should not be declared as a static. Got it? The fourth rule, the important rule is over here is constructor should not be private. Constructor should not be private. Okay, and yeah, that these are the four important rules we have. While creating the constructor, you should keep all these things in mind. First rule is constructor name must be similar to the class name. The second rule is that constructor should not return any value, even void also. What if we return a value? So if we return a value, the constructor will be acting as a normal method. Okay, so because of that, you shouldn't be returning any value. And the third rule is that constructor should not be declared as static because constructor will be called every time when we create an object. Okay. So, and the constructor should not be private. Okay. Fine. Um, yeah. Let's see the types of the constructors we have. Let's see the types of the constructors we have. So before seeing the types of the constructor, let me give the syntax of the constructor, how the constructor should be looking like. So based on our rules, I'll design a constructor. So the first rule is constructor name must be similar to the class name. So I'll give the class name and constructor should have the parameters. Constructor should not return anything. It shouldn't be returning anything. Okay. If we return any constructor, it will be back to normal method. Constructor should not be private. So it should be public only. Okay. That's it. Based on this, let's write few constructors. For example, I want to create an employee constructor. Example, I want to create an employee constructor. So I have a class called employee and I want to have a class called employee. I want to create a constructor for that. So let's see. The first rule is constructor name should be similar to the class name. What is my class name? Employee. I'll give the employee. That's it. Here you can write any type of operations. As of now, I'm writing employee object created something like this. Employee object created something like this. And constructor should not be private. It should be treated as a public access. So it will be accessible by the different packages, different classes available in packages, different packages. Okay. And if you want to create a class of product, so I'll say if you want to create a class of constructor, product class of constructor, so you'll say product, and here you'll write some SOP statements. Okay, so here you'll write product class object is created something like this. Okay, so now you got it right. So how to create a constructor? What would be the syntax of constructor? What should be followed while creating the constructor? What are the rules you have to keep in mind while creating the constructor? So now let's see the types of constructors. Types of constructors. I think we'll discuss this in a moment. I think in the next video, I'll discuss these types of constructor. So I'll stop over here. So So let's recap it once what we have discussed. So constructor is a special member method which is automatically called by the JVM for placing our user defined values. Okay, instead of placing the default values, what are the advantages we have? It eliminates constructor eliminates the placing the default values, and constructor eliminates calling the normal method. These are the some of the advantages we have. What are the rules of the constructor we have? Constructor name must be similar to the class name. Okay, constructor name must be constructor name must be similar to the class name. That's what we have created. Constructor should not return any value. Okay, constructor even void also, if we write void, it will be acting as a normal method. Constructor should not be declared as a static. If we declared as a static, it will be so creating an if we declared as a static, we can't call the constructor again and again. And constructor should not be private. Okay, so these are the some of the rules we have seen, and we have seen the syntax of the constructor as well. Okay, and we have seen some examples of creating a constructor as well. So these are the concepts we have seen so far. Okay, let's discuss the types of constructor in next class.